weeks ago, and still to this day, I think I have the number like 3 or 4 Super Bowl commercial of all time. So,
Wow.
so my if there are credentials, career credentials for me, they actually probably belong in advertising.
What was it? Give us that commercial.
So there was this big Lawrence Taylor looking linebacker that was running through the office tackling all these white people, and his name was Terry Tate. And so that was the commercial. It was for Reebok, which was my then account. And the NFL swore up and down that they would never allow a commercial with this black man going through an office tackling white people to go on air. And somehow we got it on air once. And
then they were complaints.
There were complaints. But it also broke the internet.
Nice.
Because people could relate.
Because people could relate.
Most definitely.
Who conceptualized this commercial?
So I worked with. It was actually the director was a UCLA film student at the time, and he's gone on. His latest movie was with Kevin Hart and The Rock. His name is Rawson Thurber.
Wow.
And he was a film student at that time, and he doesn't return my calls now because he's too famous and busy. But
that's corny. All right, I'm just going to say that. Okay.
You know, Karen, sometimes somebody comes on your mic, you put them on, and...
Can't get to them.
That's
Cory
how
Booker. All right, so I spent a whole time with you in Newark when you ran for mayor, and now you won't call, so I had to go public with it. But go ahead.
So
Mr.
I built up a kind of a work style of working with athletes and entertainers. I was working for the footwear companies, NBA, the NFL. At that point, Reebok we had a shoe deal with Jay-Z. We had a shoe deal with 50 Cent. We had a shoe deal with Nas. Sorry, not Nas, Nelly. And I was working hand to hand with all of these entertainers. And I eventually broke off and I started to build companies for entertainers. So there was an apparel company that I built with will.i.am of the Black Eyed Peas called EcoCycle.
So what does that look like when you say building companies? Because, we were just talking during the break and some of it on the mic, and I can't remember which is which because it feels the same, about, there's an anatomy to things, right? And there's a process to things. And sometimes we have the idea, but we don't know the process. So when you say, I built a business with.
Right.
Tell me what that looked like.
Yeah, so basically from the very first conversation, where you conceptualize an idea and 90% of the idea is unworkable. So you need to spend a couple of weeks or a couple of months to turn it into an actual business plan that can scale. So from that,
what does that mean?
So scale means that it will reach peak velocity of sales, distribution, investment. So it has
let's
to
make it real.
Yep.
The will.i.am business.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about that.
Sure. So it was a sustainable apparel business. So if you take that Aquafina water bottle, that plastic bottle, there's a process by which you can break down that plastic and turn it into a textile that you can make into clothes.
Wow.
And so that technology was, even Pharrell uses it now in his G-Star apparel, but it was very new 8-10 years ago. And so we built this business where we wanted to take textiles made from plastic bottles that could clean up the environment.
So that was the concept.
Yep.
What did you do next? So you sat in the room, will.i.am, this is something we want to do. Yes, this helps the environment.
Sure.
What comes next?
Well, in that case, what came next was who can help us to scale this business and who needs this problem to be solved. And as it turned out, we found a partnership with Coca-Cola.
Because they have the bottles.
They have way too many bottles, and at that point they had to get their business to zero waste so that they were not polluting the earth. Right. They didn't really have a great strategy.
How did you know this?
Just found out through some conversations.
Relationships,
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you give them a call. Who calls them? You get will.i.am to call? Do you need a will.i.am, or could you have called Mr. Glover?
I called on will.i.am's behalf.
Okay.
It turned out that our first meeting there was like Will's 35th birthday. So they had a birthday cake and a check.
Oh,
And
so that was a nice meeting.
it was a good
great
meeting.
damn birthday.
Come on.
A
Happy
Coca-Cola
birthday.
check?
Come on now.
So,
Did you have any inclination? So this is like for the average person listening.
yep,
They're not going to have Will I Am.
sure,
They're not going to be able to pick up the phone and call Coke,
correct.
and it won't be their 35th birthday.
Maybe not.
Okay.
Yep.
On a smaller scale, because I want to finish the anatomy of this before we get back, but I want you to think about the average person with a great idea.
Sure.
Okay, so Will I Am, you got the check. What did you do with the money?
So immediately we had to set up. It's a pretty intricate business to get bottles from the U.S. The number one country that can take, and by the way, they are the largest importer of our trash, is Taiwan.
Used to be.
Used to be.
So we have
yes.
a trade war now.
Yes,
and
true.
and then China said we're not taking any more of your trash, and this president
How poetic, right?
doesn't even
Right.
right.
Poetic license.
And so this president didn't factor that in.
Now,
So we're now almost a year into this trade war, and we also didn't understand that the soybeans that our farmers were exporting primarily to China, that China could get those soybeans anywhere
elsewhere.
for cheaper. They didn't need to be in business with us.
Cheaper.
Yeah,
Yes.
didn't
That's the whole
realize
thing
that.
about trade wars, right?
Gosh. All right, I digress. So that was our 5 minutes of Trump. Go ahead, continue.
So the very bottom line is we had to then have a implementation strategy, and by implementation meaning taking this seed of an idea, and now we have taken in investment and people are expecting us to deliver this business plan. So we have to hit the ground running. We have to get trash to Taiwan, convert it into textile
In Taiwan.
in Taiwan, send the textiles to China to be made into clothes to then be distributed here on shelves and
Wow.
racks in the U.S.
And how long did that take?
It took about 14 months to get from the seed of the idea up through distribution and apparel made.
So in
And-
this business plan, what were the margins in terms of making money? So you were covered with a Coke check.
Sure.
Coke check,
Yes,
not a Coke
indeed.
check. Coke check. So that helped. That
Yep.
gave you some cushion to be able to say, okay, we're not going to starve here. Or
Yeah, it wasn't even so much cushion. It was more like them opening up their doors because they had relationships with
Taiwan and China.
Taiwan
Right?
and Adidas to say, hey, make some sneakers and some jerseys. We'll collaborate. Will is going to make the fabric. You guys turn that into clothes and we'll all market it. So there was I believe back in 2000 and maybe 11 when we were finally up and running, and it was Black History Month. The NBA made jerseys that were made out of the textiles that
Wow.
we put.
So what happened to the business?
Well, I left the business. I went on and did a few other and different things.
Why would you leave?
Well, in many ways, I am. I like to look at myself as an accelerator. I'm very good at bringing the idea to life.
conceptualizing.
Yeah, and-
you don't
and
want to
really-
be involved in operations.
Yeah, there's a great book by a guy named Peter Thiel called
THIEL, right?
THIEL. It's called 0 to 1. He thinks about like from zero not happening to bringing something into existence, and I have kind of looked at myself as that kind of person, like bringing concepts to life.
And in business, people need to know where their strengths are.
What their strengths
Absolutely.
are, most definitely.
So a lot of people think they can do everything and they can't. I was guilty of that.
Okay.
Now I know that I can't do everything and I shouldn't do everything. So this is good. Thank you for that. So how does one go from the 0 to 1 guy to the then 0 to fun guy?
0 to fun guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
You see
I
how
love
I did
that.
See, I
I
can
love that.
freestyle.
That was very good. That was a good bars.
Bar.
Bars.
Bar.
Bar.
Bar. That was bar.
Bar. Bar.
You know, I think the idea is from Karen Hunter working in broadcasting to then saying Karen Hunter needs the franchise, the Karen Hunter Show. So in private equity or in private capital, many of your listeners who want to do early stage businesses and go for seed funding, that was me. I would go to many of the venture capitalists and I'd present companies and put on the show, the song and the dance. And after a while, I started to think, well, why am I going to this guy to ask for an opportunity, he doesn't seem that much smarter than me. And by the way, I have built businesses that have scaled big,
Right.
while this person is sitting on a cushy chair with the power of the check to write the check. And so in many ways, my career has always been to get in that person's chair. That person who was running the company that was hiring my ad agency when I started, I need to be in that person's chair. And then when I was in charge of the venture and a venture capitalist was funding my venture, I needed to get in that person's chair.
So how do you get in that person's chair? And we're talking with Marcus Glover. He is a private investor, also has a company called M. Glover Capital. When you don't have the money, Mr. Glover, how do you get in the chair of the person that's writing the check?
Well, so it's less about money. To your earlier point, it's more about relationships. You know, if you, in my opinion, if you make your business the business of relationships, it could be money, it could be access, it could be anything, but it can be a function of a relationship. So if anything that I'd want to encourage people is to learn the relationship game. Relationships are built over time.
Yes.
Many people, we're so, as a culture, looking for instant gratification. We don't really understand that this isn't a game of grand slam home runs. This is a game of base hits. Relationships is the game of over time you achieve things. Consistency over time, right? So, and if you don't hit it on the first swing, you don't give up on that relationship, because it could be on the 10th swing that you get a hit with something. So learning to value and hold relationships over time is in my opinion, a career skill.
I have a question. With the connections that you built up on the advertising end, were you in mainstream advertising?
I was.
Okay, so
I did multicultural and I was in the general market as well.
But you had the ability and the connections and the understandings on what were the pain points, what were the sweet spots, and what brands would be willing to invest in.
Absolutely correct.
And know the people who would be willing to get the checks cut.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. And that is, in my opinion, learning to just be a good student of what everybody has a need at the end of the day, you know? So many times we come to the marketplace with our own needs in mind. Why not try to think about, what does this person need
that I'm asking something
for? By the way, even venture capitalists, they have tremendous needs.
So navigating relationships is one of the first lessons I tell my students. Absolutely. Journalism is not about writing. It's not about the 5 W's. It's not about the inverted pyramid. It's about relationships, because every journalist needs a source. You need to be able to, and your relationships will determine the trajectory of your career. Now, and that doesn't mean being phony and coming in and sucking up and brown nosing. It means being authentic.
Correct.
And forging relationships as your full self.
Cannot agree with you more.
Who taught you that?
Can I tell you a story? It's so, as a young person, I went to prep schools, and I was a kid from Harlem, and my parents were Malcolmites, black nationalists who sent their children to very elite prep schools. So there was a very clear dichotomy there. And when I showed up,
was it really, or was it an understanding that to master the system that you're in, you have to learn it from the inside to build your own?
Well, I didn't necessarily. I completely agree with you. Now, I didn't know that lesson in the 5th grade. But in the 5th grade, what I realized was, with my classmates who would be bused, quote unquote, to school, showing up in the school driveway with Bentleys and, fancy ski trips to Vail and the Swiss Alps. Here's a little black kid from Harlem, and I could not compete. So my mother was a grade school teacher, and to bond with my mother, I would help her grade papers. And one day, I hope we're all around the same age. Maybe I'm a little older because I got a little gray. But one day I reached in my mother's bag and I pulled out a pen, and the pen had an eraser on the top. which back in my era, you had to write in pencil because
Right.
teachers did not want to correct your papers in pen. So I said to my mom, "What is this?" And she said, "That's a pen that erases."
I remember that.
And this was like
It was like Eraser Mate or something like that.
eraser. I mean, which back then that was probably like the iPhone coming out. It was
Yeah.
like a really big deal.
Yeah, it was.
And I remember going to school the next day with this Eraser Mate pen, and all of these kids of wealth. It didn't matter that they drove to school in a Bentley. It didn't matter that they were going to Switzerland on vacation. All that mattered was they didn't have the Eraser Mate pen, and I did. And so, do you know what I did? I set up the Pen Club, and I was the CEO of the Pen Club. And now, if you wanted to be cool, it wasn't about your father's Bentley. It was about the fact that you have to be in the Pen Club, right? And so what I did was I turned that relationship in my favor. It wasn't about competing on what they had. It was about
Creating this is all I've been talking about.
that's why we're here.
Marcus Glover. No, communication is a powerful tool.
It is.
And
So
the
true.
frustration is sometimes people don't get what you're saying.
Right.
And they feel like, you're coming down on them, or you're making them feel bad about where they are. And no, this is a power play.
It absolutely
Let's stop
is.
trying to dance over here and create the moves over here that everybody wants to do, which is what we do anyway.
And the beauty is we all have value. It's learning to see our value.
That's it.
It really is turning the stage lights in our favor so that we're seen as not a deficit player, but a valued player.
And that's the common thread, I think, between all people. No matter color,
I agree.
background, everybody is looking to know that they matter.
Right. And looking for their own
And
value.
looking for their
Let me
own
tell
value,
you,
yeah.
I would love to not talk about race and racism and all of that other stuff. But that's the lens through which many people see the world, right?
Yeah.
So I have to meet them where they are. And unfortunately, too many of us are there. So it's like, because of racism, I'm not. So we do things subtly, like a Tech Tuesday or Monday Move, where there's examples of people like you, Mr. Glover, who are out there doing things. And then we're systematically, very subtly and not so subtly putting systems in place. That's why I asked you to break down the anatomy.
Yeah.
Because there's somebody out there, so let's take it to a regular business, who has an idea. Because
Yep.
everyone has them.
Yep.
But, and they may even have a business plan, but it's got an Article A or Article 1 with 3 points. It's not simple. And so the implementation and the scalability is not going to ever be there because they don't know how to get from 0 to 1, and then from 1 to wherever.
You know, the beauty that I think is that in my opinion, I wake up every day with a sense that, first of all, I wake up with enormous gratitude to our ancestors because in every way imaginable, we are here every day in this life to answer the call that our ancestors had for a better day. And I have news. That day is here. So I don't look at one day to the next from the standpoint of what we don't have. Elon Musk, the famous technologist, he talks about
That's Tesla, right?
Tesla, exactly, and former PayPal founder.
Yeah.
He talks about the power of the phone in our hands. Everybody 14 and up has a cell phone in there that is absolutely more powerful than the craft that the lunar module that landed on the moon. We have the access to information at our fingertips, right? I mean, as kids, we grew up watching Star Trek and Beam Me Up Scotty. That technology is here.
It's here, right.
Okay, that device in your hand, there's not a question that you can't input to that device and get an answer to, right? So I look at the fact that we have so many resources at our disposal that whether you are attempting to go into business, there's business incubators, there are business accelerators, there are mentors, there are consultants. So it really is just about how you apply yourself
Right.
to your wildest dreams. And I think that is the message that we want to really send to our people is like, this is the greatest time for your acceleration.
That's how we started the show off talking about my trip to Beaufort, South Carolina, which is the entry point for my ancestors, coming from Cameroon. And, when we talk about free people, we talk about slaves and, these narratives, they don't tell you enough that those people were artisans, they were architects, they were builders, they were seamstresses, they were chefs, they were doctors, they were soothsayers, they were lawyers, right?
Correct.
They don't tell you enough about that. But going back there and reading and seeing the museums and being in that experience, you feel it.
Yep.
And what you were saying is so important, that so many of us have lost our connection to our ancestral way, our ancestral spirit is what we need to reconnect to. And I've been able to reconnect to it. And so now that I've been able to reconnect to it, you can't tell me what I can't do. If they could do and go through and survive and flourish and get me to here, you cannot tell me what we can't do.
Come on.
You can't tell me what we can't do.
And one of the things I was even talking to Kareem about this weekend was the way our ancestors did things was a community.
Absolutely.
I got rice, you got yams, let's trade.
Yep.
We did it together. I was even talking to Akon last year, and he was talking about the village that he came from, where everybody lived so it may have been cousins, everybody lived in the same village, and they just all traded within this village. So there was a community around the community to make sure that there was always support, to make sure everybody ate, to make sure there was no homelessness in his community, because there was always a place for some. Like when we think about that today, as we step over people leaving our trains in the mornings and in the evenings, think about that. Like there should never be a hungry person, and there should never be. But that's who we are naturally. Yeah. So if we're existing in this space, it's unnatural for us to exist in this space. So, tell me, Marcus, about your business and how people connect with you. Marcus Glover's in the house.
Sure. Well, my business, I run a private investment firm, and what that simply means is, I am a investor in scaling companies. So there are several different practices in private investment. There's what you might call an early stage practice.
What does that look like?
So that looks like people, early stage angel investing. So someone who has an idea and a PowerPoint, and they're looking for an initial investment of seed capital.
Why would somebody need that? Because that was another conversation. It's like we have gotten in this tech space obsessed with getting that check, that round of funding, that next check. We see Ring, we see this, we see that, we see Nas, and like there's $1 billion here, $1 billion, Amazon's investing in.
Yeah, but you have to start small.
Right.
Know?
So do we need that, or can we?
It can be very valuable. Angel investing can be very valuable in terms of initial prototyping. So if someone, for example, has an idea to do sustainable apparel and they need to show you how to take a plastic bottle and turn it into a shirt, and if they can get one made, then they can get 1 million made. Right. So you might need
that costs something.
That costs something. It costs money to build molds. That those molds can then to be turned into prototypes. So now
we have the shirt.
So we have
the angel got us to the shirt.
Yeah. So
now what's next?
So then an angel investor will go, wow, you made one shirt. You showed me how this works. Mm-hmm. Now sell, right? Meaning take me from one shirt to 100,000 shirts, right? So that is a separate part of the early stage practice. So prior was angel investing. Now this is early stage, where you want to take it from one shirt to 100,000 shirts. And I need to show investors that I can put my shirts in 10 stores and people will be excited about it. And then I'm going to get a product placement on the Karen Hunter show. She's going to talk about it. And from an investor standpoint, I go, wow, Kareem's got a real business here. But then I might need growth capital. So I might need to now go from using this guy's factory to buying my own factory, and from doing a co-distribution situation to buying my own distribution. I need to hire my own drivers, buy my own trucks to distribute my own product. And that will enable me to go from 100,000 shirts to 10 million shirts.
And that's
then
called scalability.
And that's called scalability.
People, if you're not thinking like that,
Right.
this is what the anatomy of a business looks like.
Correct.
Right? So if you're not thinking like that, you're not ready for business.
So I focus on scale capital. So that's the end of things. Now, traditionally, as people of color and women, this has been the hardest round of funding to attract. Mm-hmm. Right? So there's a lot of early stage accelerators, incubators. They're very popular. There's a lot of talk around getting more people of color and marginalized people into early stage incubators. My concern is that runway to be able to prove out your business plan and then get to the point where now you're ready for later stages of funding, who is going to be there to sit down with you and to plan out how to take you through an exit where you can take that company to an IPO. And so that is the purpose of my company, M. Glover Capital, is to really be a partner in late stage funding for people of color and marginalized people's businesses.
What do you get for that, Marcus?
Well, typically I get very involved. I'm not passive money. I want to get very involved in the deal and roll up my sleeves. And most times people will see having someone who has experiences in relationships, can call up, some of the bigger distribution companies, a Target or a Walmart, help out with those types of things. So I will get very involved. I'll put on a jersey and become an equity partner in a business and really help that company scale.
What do you get for that, Marcus?
It all depends on how involved and how many T-shirts he puts on.
So what typically, because ownership is important. Right?
Ownership is very important.
Now, I'm not mad at you because you look like me, right? True. So if we're doing ownership, I may not be mad at that.
Yeah.
But if we're going for these institutional investors, they may not look like me. And then the biggest issue for us is we know what we're doing, a lot of us.
Yep.
But somebody who's investing 10, 20, $30 million into a company wants to tell us what to do. Sometimes. Okay, how do we get them to mind their damn business at the same time let us mind their business so that they can get their money back?
Tell them to mind their damn business. Just as straight out as that. I love that. Have me as an advisor and I'll tell them for you.
Thank you. And this is what, a lot of us feel beholden. I'm talking from experience. So in 1999, I got $1 million from Bear Stearns and I knew what I was doing, but they gave me money.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had to do it, even though I knew what they were telling me to do was wrong.
No.
But I'm in my 20s. I'm like, what do I know?
But you know what? I think that is the most important thing, is having that experience. Again, you might not get it all together right on the first time as a founder, an entrepreneur, but you have to build those experiences. I did 2 early stage businesses. One, I exited right out of beta. I was able to sell it. It was so exciting that an investor I found immediately, I couldn't even put the business, get it up and running before somebody came and put an offer sheet into me. The second business, I bankrupted right out of beta, right? So, but honestly, bankrupting a company was like what 3 years of business school would never teach me, right? Because I had to go through that experience in order to see all the things that I had done wrong. So I don't ever think that there is a loss. It's either a win or a lesson.
I love that. All right. Will you come back? Yeah.
I would be delighted.
Okay. Marcus Glover. He's going to be part of our family. You can follow him at Marcus Glow. G-L-O. Marcus Glow. G-L-O. You can follow. You active on Twitter?
I can be.
Okay. I don't think he is. You can go marcusglover.com and find out everything that he's about. Thank you so much for being here. Somebody says they don't know what beta means. Okay, y'all got to look that up. All right, it's the Karen Hunter Show. We'll be right back. No, wait, hold on, Smiz. Hold on. Smiz, just hold on.